Well, welcome back to the Law&Crime Network. My name is Bob Bianchi. I'm going to be taking it from 12 to 3. You know I love this Jonchuck trial. Insanity defense. It's an amazing case. Prosecution's closing argument right now. Let's go to court. Okay, welcome back. So that was the prosecution's closing statement in the Jonchuck trial. I have my good friend, Gene Rossi, 30 years at the DOJ, a law and crime legal analyst, trial lawyer extraordinaire. Gene, how are you this fine Monday, sir?
I'm doing really well after yesterday's Masters. I feel pretty good.
Yeah, everybody seems to be in a good mood about that. Hey, Gene, just real quick, just two stylistic points, because I know that me and you've taught a lot of prosecutors over the years. I thought this prosecutor did, from what I saw, a very, very good job. He was very logical. He did a good job explaining complex expert testimony. But what I really liked at the end was that he pitted it down to common sense things. This was a man who was raged and angered, not insane, and he kept hammering that theme over and over again. He also hammered the theme that he wanted to do the one act that could hurt the most people at one given time, which thematically is factually probably accurate in this case. So I'll start with that. How did you like the way he constructed it in his presentation?
I thought he was phenomenal because he wove in the jury instruction with his closing argument. That's number one. Number two, and this is very subtle, I loved implying to the jury, without saying the word, that the defendant is a coward. And he had a delusion, but he wasn't psychosis. And he had a delusion, but he didn't follow up on it. That's what I meant.
Right.
He wanted to kill both himself and his daughter, but he only killed his daughter. And the prosecutor said, that's not delusional. He just wanted to kill his daughter. And what he's implying is he's a coward.
Excellent points. Gene, you know, I always used to say to my trial attorneys that I was training, I don't know about yourself or how you feel about it, but that whenever you get the box with all the data, okay, and I always just say the conviction's in the box, okay? You need to read everything, you need to digest everything, you need to know everything. But from the very beginning of your case, you need to be preparing for what it is you want to say in summation. Because if you don't know what you want to say in summation, then you're not going to think about the evidence you need to gather. And secondarily, you need to twist your brain to be the best defense lawyer in the world and look at your own case with all of its blemishes and pimples and problems and say, what would I as a defense lawyer do? And then move to do what you can well before you get to summation in eliminating those blemishes. Thoughts?
You read my mind. When I trained those 1,000 baby prosecutors, I always told them at least two things, Bob. One, when you begin the case, maybe months before, you always think of the final mosaic. What is the theme or punchline you're going to give the jury, the mosaic that you want them to look at? And number two, Yogi Berra, if you don't know where you're going, when you get there, you will be lost.
Right. So, Gene, you know, we have a lot of people that watch us that are attorneys and law students and people looking at how to try a case and the mechanics of it. Can't get a better guy than like you, who's been in the trenches for so long, as well as our chatters and our crime law aficionados who just love true crime. And something that I've heard many prosecutors say, many lawyers for that matter, is the theory that's quite opposite of what we're talking about, which is just throw it all up against the wall and whatever sticks, sticks. You must have heard this in your career, and it's like nails on a chalkboard to me, and no wonder they don't win too many cases.
You know what just drives me crazy, and I've actually heard a couple prosecutors say this. You don't have to get fancy. You don't have to have all these grand themes. The jury will figure it out when they deliberate. I can't tell you how irresponsible that is.
It's maddening. And you know, before we get to a clip that I want to throw to with respect to this case that I'd like to hear your thoughts about, I just want to ask you one further question. I also liked the idea that he put the defense, the thing that he had to worry about most, the prosecutor, that is the insanity defense, on an old school, I know it may sound crazy, easel with a poster board with very clear, you know, points there so that he can reference them in front of the jury without all the sizzle that we have now with things that we can do in a courtroom. It was very direct, very powerful, right there in front of the jurors' faces the entire time. Thoughts?
Oh my God, it was simplicity can be a beautiful thing because people at their core love simplicity. They want to be able to just see the clearness of your argument. And when you have the jury instruction on this board and you're talking about cherry picking certain information and then you circle with your hand the language that you got to focus on, that's beautiful.
Yeah, like a laser beam that simplicity was, because in fact, that's the only thing that's relevant in the case. Has a defense proven, or has the state not proven or overcome the burden, if you will, of whether he was insane or he wasn't insane? Was he just enraged, or was he enraged and or insane? That's the issue, period, end of story. And that's what he put up in front of the jury the entire time. Gene Rossi, always great to have you with your insights as an amazing trial lawyer and now an amazing TV legal analyst and still an amazing defense lawyer, because I know you're still practicing as I am. So we're not just talking from the talking heads point of view, although you saw my Instagram over the weekend with my talking heads. You liked it.
Oh, I was laughing. I almost called you. That was hilarious.
Well, we actually do it too. Gene, there's a reason the producers are playing this clip, and we've talked about this before. This was introduced to the jury during the course of the trial, and we've discussed it before. Illuminating the audience's mind what it is that Gene Rossi sees in that clip.
You know, it's a two-edged sword. If I'm a defense attorney, he's leaving it in the hands of God. That's consistent with a psychosis. However, this is the third time I've seen this video, and that prosecutor brought it out. He brought out a conversation that the defendant had when he's 12 years old. If I ever get in trouble, I'm going to plead insanity. He didn't look so insane in that video you just played. He looked like a guy who was going back to that conversation he had when he was 12 years old. That's the way I'm now looking at it.
Yeah, Gene, you know what? At least from my limited point of view, had I not even had that information that he had said that years ago, which is obviously brutal for the defendant, hurts the defendant, to me, he's not acting in what I understand to be a psychotic form. He may be saying crazy things, but he's listening to the judge's questions. He's not interrupting them. His words may have something that I'll leave it in the hands of God. In fact, you know what? I'm a faith-based person, and that's how I believe everything myself. He just didn't come off as being the crazy guy. It sounded more orchestrated in my mind. I don't think it's convincing to the jury that he's insane.
No, and I just remembered a case I had about 5 years ago. A man was arrested at Dulles Airport. He was certifiably insane. And we sent him for evaluation. And we had a competency hearing status. And he had to be kept in his cell, and we had to hear him through the cell. And the way he acted, you didn't have to be an expert to realize that something wasn't right. He seemed a little bit calculated.
You know, I know you know the answer to this. It was like the justice that wrote, I don't know how to define pornography, but
Yes.
I know it when I see it. And it's kind of the same thing as it relates to mental illness. Gene Rossi, we're always talking literature. We're always talking Supreme Court justices. We're always talking meatballs, pasta, and polenta. You can't go anywhere. We got to do some business first here at the Law&Crime Network. And I'm going to have more Gene Rossi and Jonchuck on the other end. Okay, welcome back. We're in the defense's closing statement. Gene Rossi, thoughts so far about the presentation of the defense in trying to show that he was, in fact, insane?
Well, one thing she's doing that I love is she's taking the words of the prosecutor in opening statement and shoving it down the prosecutor's throats, because it appears from her side that they overpromised and made some statements that weren't supported by the evidence. That's always good. Number two, she's addressing the requirements of the jury instructions, premeditation, felony murder rule, all those things that the government has to prove. They have the burden on insanity, but they have to prove the elements of the crimes charged. And I thought that was very effective.
Gene, just a real quick note about this lawyer. I don't know how much the jury has seen it, but we've seen her do a lot of very spirited and sparky argument with the court. She's very loquacious and very articulate and very passionate. I see some zip off that fastball a little bit here. She's doing a lot more thinking than, I'm not suggesting she wasn't thinking when she was making those arguments, but she seems more cautious or has some trepidation compared to her typical style.
You mean there's some pregnant pauses? I did notice that too, but she did have a couple of good moments where she was very organized and, talking extemporaneously. There are some slow moments, I will concede that.
Yeah, and it's just stylistic. I guess in front of a jury, they're used to seeing you a certain way. Like me, I'm like a lot like her probably. I'm very fast and I'm very, going on and passionate and aggressive. And it doesn't mean it's stylistically wrong. She's doing a great job for what she needs to do. I just noted a change in tone with her. And I think that she's trying to get in her mind around some tricky legal issues slowly with the jury. But I'm wondering whether she's going to turn that passion back up towards the end. What do you think?
I think she's going to have to. And the other thing is this. It's Monday morning or Monday afternoon. She probably worked on this since Friday, and she's exhausted. Fatigue could be setting in. But I'll guarantee you she's going to dig down deep. And in the last 15 minutes of her closing, she's going to be very passionate and on fire.
It'll be interesting to see, Gene, you know as well as I do that one of the training tips that we give to our prosecutors is that you got to fill up on meatballs and veal cutlets and polenta before you go in there on Monday morning to deliver a closing statement. Right, Gene? That's the best food you could get in order to do a great closing statement. And, of course, I'm only kidding. Gene, we got to go to a break. We'll be right back. Okay, my time is coming to a close, but before then, I have to get an observation from Jean Rossi. Jean, she is very, very good with eviscerating expert testimony of the state and presenting her expert testimony. Extremely prepared, scoring points. Thoughts?
Train is moving down a track towards a station called Clear and Convincing. She destroyed Dr. Lazaro. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, and what was compelling to me was that she was using the very scientific literature that experts in the field rely upon, but I really loved an analogy. To me, the analogies are more clear. That if you had a cold, and you went to the doctor, and 5 doctors told you had cancer, and one said you didn't, one who doesn't even have the certifications, didn't even examine you, whatever, you wouldn't just go home and take NyQuil. I love those things, Gene.
Oh, that you just grabbed that one. That was probably the highlight of her closing so far.
Yeah, Gene, it's things like that that resonate with a jury. She's doing a great job. Gene Rossi, as always, I want to thank you, my friend, for being on the show. I will be back on Wednesday from the 12 o'clock to 3 p.m. hour. But listen, guys, just because I'm going doesn't mean you should go. We have Michael Bryan from the Law&Crime Network that's going to pick it up from here to follow more of the Jonchuck trial. I'll see you Wednesday. Have a great day.